Hey guys, Dr. Diaz here. I'm going to talk to you briefly about how chapters 8, 9, and 10 are applicable in the real world. I've provided some past videos that talk about chapters 1 through 4, 5 through 7, and now we're going to wrap up the class and I'm going to speak briefly on 8, 9, and 10 and how the content you learn, I put into practice every day at work as an analyst. So let's start with 8. I have it pulled up here. And in Chapter 8, you used stat software to conduct a chi-square. You had to draw logical informed conclusions from stats results, and you had to start your writing of a manuscript adhering to APA guidelines. So these 3 things, let me tell you, I daily work on special data requests that come in from the university, and I often use chi-square to test categorical data. We often have data requests such as graduating. Did they graduate, yes or no? So I use chi-square to determine, are the means between those of the yeses, between those of the nos, is it significant, the rate of graduation? And if there is, then I have to report it, and I tell them based on the chi-square analyses that it's significant below 0.05 and that the differences of the mean are significant. I just recently did a chi-square analysis for letter grades earned in a biology course for a request, and I had to tell them that the differences between these grades, A through F, were in fact significant, that students were earning significantly different levels of grades within these courses in biology. This incorporates bullet number 2, drawing logical informed conclusions from test results. Oftentimes when working, we get these results back and we have to infer them and understand what's going on, and we go even further and we do diagnostics or influence diagnostics on the results to make sure that we didn't overlook any weighted variables or that there wasn't something affecting the results. And every day you get better and better at it. Nobody wakes up overnight just knowing this stuff. It takes a lot of practice. There was a time where I struggled with it and I had to just get my feet wet and just keep on going, just like riding a bike. You get really good the more you practice. So now we know how to, people in our office, me and fellow analysts, we know what to look for in these results, and we know what not to look for as well. Last piece, writing this APA guidelines, sticking to it. I'm in the process of submitting multiple publications to journals right now, and I'll tell you this, you will not get in if you do not follow their APA guidelines. Many journals adhere to the APA guidelines and they stress it in the submission process and say all submissions must adhere to the APA guidelines in order to be considered, or else they will be rejected. Oftentimes it's not on purpose, but we may overlook a minuscule little detail such as 2 spacebar spaces after every sentence for the start of the next period after the start of the next sentence. So you finished a sentence and you ended with a period, you have to hit spacebar twice, ting ting, and then start your new sentence. This can be looked at, and if you don't do it correctly throughout the whole manuscript, they send it back and say, did not adhere to APA guidelines, spacing, sentence spacing is needing to be revised. So that's the kind of scrutiny journals hold researchers to when accepting their work for publication. Let's look at Module 9. In Module 9, we got 2 points here. You're going to identify research situations that call for qualitative research methodology, and you're going to analyze this by doing a coding scheme and a summary table. I've done this a lot. I've interviewed 20 different individuals from different countries, and I had to carry out qualitative research where we sat and we talked to each other, about how the students from these different cultures, how their experiences were in the courses they took in an American college. And sometimes it's very interesting, the participants weren't understanding the questions I were asking them because they speak another language. So I ended up having to think of ways to convey what I wanted to ask them, and I ended up typing the questions on my computer screen just in a Word document, and they could look at the question and study it because they have to interpret it from English to their language and really think about what this question means. So my qualitative research took a turn where it was very meaningful to not just say the question, like this is an example. I asked them, does your instructor give you compliments, positive compliments as a student? if I ask them that, they have to think about it and ask me again, what do I mean by that? If I put it on the screen, they can look at it and tear it apart and think, and they can better answer. So part of this was turning into the coding scheme and the summary table, where after I did all these interviews, I had pages upon pages of countless hours with a research team of 5 people transcribing all of these interviews. And I had to pour through pages, hundreds of pages of interviews to find similar reoccurring themes. And I finished off making a summary table of all the themes and sub-themes that came out of the interviews. So that's how I've worked with qualitative data. In my current position as an analyst, we get qualitative data when we call people for data and we ask them questions such as, out of all your professors, how many are in the chair position? We may just get a phone call or an email, nothing formal, and they say this is how many, or these are the names of the people that are in chair positions, and I have to make a code scheme for this because it is qualitative data and turn it into quantitative for whatever statistical analyses I'm doing with that data. Module 10. This is fun because you're doing this. It's a wrap-up. Module 10, you're really working on your final paper, polishing it, cleaning it, and getting it put in for a final grade. But it's the same thing about manuscripts and standards. Looking it all over, when we're done writing a manuscript and we want to send it to a journal, once we're finished writing it, we have a peer look it over, and this is called peer review. And we have 1 or 2 peers in the office look over it, and they tell us what they find, and they do edits, and they say, I've noticed errors here, 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 and here. And we clean the paper submission 2 more times, 1 to 3 more times before we send it out. And then once we believe it's been polished and we've had 3 different sets of eyes on it, then we send it to the journal. Then most likely 9 out of 10 times they reject it because they have their own revisions. And you have a committee, maybe 3 people are on the journal committee, and each one says member 1, member 2, member 3, and here are all of the comments and revisions each one wants you to do. And they may be different or they may be the same. So you're in constant revision, and it takes about a year from when you publish or submit it to getting it published. It takes about a year. So if I submitted something today, in between now and next May, I'm going to be doing revisions, resubmission, waiting, more revisions, more resubmissions, waiting for it to get accepted. It's been accepted. Now I got to wait for it to appear in a journal, which is a couple months down the road, and you don't see this data published for another year. So that's pretty common. So these have been how modules 8, 9, and 10 are applicable in the real world, and how what you're learning today is out there being done by people like me. Thanks, guys.